The TerraCollar project provides a different view on the future of work, one that responds to the goal of staying below 2 degrees by 2050. It demonstrates why this reframing is necessary, why current discussions around the future of work are not helpful, and how this future may begin to compose. The project departs from the discussions about working hours reduction, non-work advocacy, and transition of the entire labor force to coding and data science. Instead, it argues that future work will be tethered to the very material processes of climate change mitigation and adaptation. This new type of work necessarily strides away from the white and blue-collar distinctions and emerges as a new category of its own, Terra-Collar. Scaling up to the amount of produced carbon emissions and limiting global warming will require an effort equivalent to the largest terraforming project in human history. It will demand mass labor mobilization, as well as new knowledge, skills, and jobs to appear and disseminate across the globe. The end-of-time narratives that describe the climate crisis have demonstrated their inability to instigate effective actions against the problems that become more tangible with every year. A new story is needed for the times we inhabit, one that motivates action with the tools at our disposal. To understand why a new framing on the future of work is necessary, a clarification on what makes it urgent is needed. Current assessments that estimate how a 2 degrees Earth would look like have developed by means of different computation systems. The development of these systems enable the temperature rise, mass species migration, land and ocean transformation, and other risks to gain higher resolution. The TerraCollar addresses its risks as a site for prompt actions and works back from a scenario that stays below 2 degrees pre-industrial by 2050. As things currently stand, we are already heading towards 4 degrees by mid-century, and any future work scenario should inherently account for these figures. However, the work to be done needs to be reframed as well. TerraCollar Work is an alternative to the future of work discussions haunted by the legacy of the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution introduced a factory system with clearly defined roles and the division of labor, thus limiting the tasks to be performed and the need for training. It consolidated class hierarchies among workers and created a framework that broadly defined the required knowledge, skill sets, salary, and social benefits based on their apparel, white collar for office workers and blue collar for manual labor. Such distinctions continue to this day, with new categories such as black and green collar. The TerraCollar Work breaks away with these distinctions, encompassing and repurposing some functions that the sectors currently imply. It proposes a hybrid in-between that requires flexible and elastic sets of knowledge and skills informed by climate change mitigation and adaptation. As such, TerraCollar does not merely refer to waged, formalized labor, and also allows various forms of unwaged labor to be considered. It describes the conditions and functions that define the worker, the work field, and the way towards the terraforming goal. Most future work scenarios advocate for declines in many sectors because of advanced automation. Job loss due to mechanization mostly threatens blue-collar workers, and recent developments in machine learning have started to threaten some white-collar positions as well. Conversely, white-collar labor is mostly concerned with addressing issues such as working hours and workload reductions. The UBI proposals also suggest that the taxes should be redistributed to clear more time from work, yet guaranteeing financial security. However, the terraforming task emphasizes that the future will instead require more labor, not less. While TerraCollar framing suggests that the entire labor cannot be fully mechanized, it does not consider automation as a redemption or as a threat. Rather, it addresses automation as a consequential and complementary part of the effort to limit temperature to a habitable level. This automation will require development, maintenance, and deployment, and it will also open up time for more effective use of human skills and provide better insights for decision-making. Human, mechanical, ecosystem, and algorithmic labor will be required to terraform the planet. The current discussions around the future of work are not helpful because they disregard the main source of disruption for human activity in the future, as well as the biggest potential for employment, namely climate change. The TerraCollar work arises from the climatic challenges set by the 2 degrees by 2050 goal and encompasses various activities that ensure limiting global warming and adapting to the altered living conditions. The Terra type of collar stands for both the established collar division of labor that is being reworked, as well as for the terraforming processes that are being implemented for climate actions. Repurposing existing industries, managing climate migrations, providing emergency services, supervising machinery and data production, these are the tasks for TerraCollar workers. It obtains a hybrid form where knowledge and skills that are labeled under different collars merge in a multidisciplinary manner. The TerraCollar work requires a collective and collaborative effort beyond national and party interests, which is organized through mass mobilization of labor. Millions of people will need to perform the tasks according to the goal state, while industries and nations will play a role in supporting societal adaptation to climate change impacts. There are 5 parameters that shape the organization of the TerraCollar work: scale, mobilization, repurposement, training, and sensing. Current crisis demonstrates the impact that capital accumulation as a means to commodify matter and deploy energy on a planetary scale has produced. But the urgency to limit global warming does not allow to wait for a post-capitalist scenario. To store back the carbon emitted in the last century, halt and actively reverse ecological damage, large-scale actions should be activated involving public and private sectors. Examples of actions proposed at the required scale are the Green New Deals, which are framed as massive employment initiatives directed towards net zero. However, as nation-state-sponsored initiatives, Green New Deals imply financial benefits for the parties involved, grant access to those legally defined as citizens, and are subject to instrumentalization for election purposes. While these programs are limited by national constraints, some remain useful if decoupled. Likewise, recent green commitments of global actors known to act driven by profit demonstrate the scale and cross-institutional cooperation necessary for this TerraCollar project. Corporations like Walmart are examples of planned and tuned supply chains that tweak production at the source, adjusting for alterations in the projected demand. TerraCollar work requires actions on both sides, state and market, a hybrid that operates best because its means of implementation are different, ones that ensure coordination and agreement towards shared goals. To carry out the terraforming project on the proposed scale, this new work should involve mass mobilization of labor. Some examples of mass labor mobilization are forced labor systems, such as those in the USSR and China. These systems have demonstrated their productivity in constructing large-scale terraforming projects like hydropower plants, railways, and irrigation systems, as well as coordinating thousands of people for these purposes. While displaying different tools that enabled mobilization of labor, they have also revealed its human and ecological costs. TerraCollar jobs require reworking these and other forms of labor mobilization, to achieve climate mitigation and adaptation and avoid overexploitation of human and material resources. The TerraCollar category also implies the logistics and coordination necessary to organize the process of mobilization. For instance, it addresses the management of climate refugees, whose numbers are estimated to grow between 25 million to 1 billion by 2050. Facilitation of their movement will require the creation of coordinated networks of mobility that will involve various sectors and establish necessary infrastructures of access, resource allocation, and supply chains anticipated by migratory patterns. They will also involve large amounts of labor for counseling, relocation, and social adaptation to new environments. The TerraCollar work implies a transition of active and phased-out industrial infrastructures to carbon capture and storage, as well as their repurposement for other climate mitigation activities. As we already find ourselves on a planet terraformed by the work of extractive industries, adaptation to a new climate cannot afford building the facilities from scratch. Sectors, such as oil and gas, possess proprietary advanced and expensive tools to extract oil, and they can be repurposed to store carbon, hinging on the skills that this labor force has. To keep within 2 degrees margins, we need an amount of effort equivalent to running these industries in reverse. Blue and green hydrogen can be produced at the extraction and refining sites, while pipelines and transportation logistics already in place can be repurposed for non-pollutant technologies. Transition to hydrogen is also the most viable option for countries with little economic incentives to transition to green energy, such as Russia. TerraCollar work will also include detecting and planning adaptation for suboptimal facilities, and reuse them for centers in charge of providing climate mitigation services and hazard anticipation control, such as recent floods in Europe and fires in Siberia. Implementation of these technologies will compel the labor force to adapt to new working environments. The TerraCollar work emphasizes labor reskilling and upskilling, so that workers can obtain literacy to operate technical systems and master practical abilities to perform hands-on tasks. The skill transition will be enabled through various educational and training programs, which will have to be available for continuous upgrade. The scale of training will involve corporate universities to provide vocational courses, as well as short, modular, and continuous technical training necessary to master the required skill set and carry out the redesigning of various occupational fields. The sector of land use demonstrates how some of these programs are already operating, suggesting the ways in which they can be taken on a larger scale. With increasing estimates of almost 1 billion acres of deserted farmland in the world, around 40% can be converted to regenerative agriculture, afforestation, and other carbon-friendly systems by 2050. To enact this restoration, massive training programs need to be carried out with local communities to ensure long-term sustainability. From low-cost techniques such as agroforestry to high-cost such as precision farming and seed bombing, these strategies will take the lead in transitioning towards an articulated land use as a planned endeavor and create more energy-efficient agriculture, allowing for strategic rewilding. An increase in agricultural efficiency inherently implies less manual labor and thus requires further training programs to ensure rural populations are involved in forestry regeneration and management initiatives. The TerraCollar work is tethered to the materiality of the planet, and this endeavor will be impossible to complete without sensing on a comparable level. Knowing where to sample, where to deploy limited resources, where to anticipate an emergency, where to repurpose, train, and mitigate requires sensing. Ecological sensing needs to be translated into financial assessment. For instance, the increased data on ecological services provided by marshes, patlands, and mangroves demonstrate the value that these ecosystems retain without being farmed or mined. Carbon credits and budgeting prompt the development for sampling, accounting, and assigning value to non-commercial assets such as water and mineral cycles. Therefore, financial assessment also motivates accuracy in sampling, surveying, and synthesizing information, requiring high-tech and high-touch trainees to carry out these tasks. Scale and mobilization have no direction without sensing. Repurposement and training programs to be implemented will be informed by sensing of the material, population, and energy flows rather than by labor market demands. This informational process is recursive, allowing the projected timeframes, goal states, and efforts required for this terraforming project to be updated. This wide array of sectors, skill sets, and types of jobs are grouped within the TerraCollar, as this type of work suggests moving beyond the labor system inherited from the Industrial Revolution and understanding the actions required to mitigate climate crisis as a coordinated effort. The way society breaks down the roles of work requires an update if we are to provide an articulated response to the new climate reality we inhabit. To ensure Earth transforms back to a viable environment for many species, with humans as the primary risk group, a new kind of work should instigate large-scale climate actions with tools at our disposal. Scale, mobilization, repurposement, training, and sensing define the goals and organization of the TerraCollar work necessary for this terraforming project to succeed. Reframing the discussions about labor from UBI and automation to the very real and urgent magnitude of effort required to reverse the course will allow for better coordination and more realistic goal setting that open new ways of keeping global warming under control.